Good. So I assume that a lot of people will not know what I mean with this title, so I will elaborate during the talk. First of all, what I would like to know, because after a series of non-technical talks, how many non-engineers are in the room? Yeah, that's cool. Because actually I try not to be too technical. My speech will be about the work that we do within our team, and especially on audience data, and we have some big things to share. So let's start. So first, let's explain what 4X actually means. And if I remove the title and everything, you actually see some of my biggest hobbies, and these hobbies are board games, especially 4X games. And 4X stands for, oh, no. For expand, explore, exploit, and the most aggressive one, exterminate. But I will try not to make it that aggressive. At the end, I would like to exchange the last term to exchange, because we have something to share with you or to all the brands of Tamedia. First of all, I need to quickly go one step back. In every board game, there is an incentive. And in 2 days, you probably all have heard about this. Today's data is the oil, basically. And if you read through that, of course, you have to process this oil to make some value out, to take some value out of it. And data, especially audience data, is very important nowadays for all our applications and services that we provide. And, oh, sorry, maybe I'm a bit nervous. Tamedia has a lot to offer in that regards. Tamedia, with all our brands, reach most of the Swiss citizens every day with many different use cases, starting from the news section, of course, then going to buying a car, buying a house, looking for a new job, during summertime, looking for a new grill for your garden, these kind of activities. So we have really all these kind of use cases which are really important, and we have brands that all fight on top positions in the Swiss market. So a lot of people visit us on a daily basis, and all these people leave a lot of interesting information and traces. And this information and traces are really important for the products to use them, because with this data we can make the services more connected to what the people are actually looking for. And I will elaborate that a little bit. So let's focus on audience data. Audience data is everything from people buying a product on one of our brands, from visiting a website, reading articles, sharing articles, all these kind of stuff. That's considered audience data. And within our team, we have developed the idea that within Tamedia, there must be a way to use this data. So we have our incentive of our work is basically to create added value of this massive amount of audience data. So this is the why we do what we do. And then the what we do is basically what we want to create, or what we created is an engine that can create a holistic profile of users, of our users. And how we do that is technically now we have created a data pipeline, we call. Basically, it's a series of trackers that are collecting data from the different websites, putting them all into one central repository, processing it and making it available and usable for products. And about these services, I'm definitely going to talk more about. So this whole thing is developed by a very small team of mine. We are at the heart of Tamedia. We are not directly connected to a brand. This has advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages is, of course, we have the possibility to work on a lot of hard problems that are basically which the products are facing with our expertise. The little bit negative side, on the other hand, is of course because we are not part of the product, we are usually asked late in the game to participate and to help. But this is not really a problem. As Tamedia has so many brands, there is always something to do for us. We are a distributed team. This is also a specialty. We have the data scientist part in Zurich and the data engineering part in Belgrade. And we were one of the first teams to have this kind of setup. And it works really, really well for us. Okay. So let's talk first about the expand. So now in this board game universe, what does expand mean? Expand means usually you are looking for getting those resources. So we are looking now for getting this audience data somehow to us. And what we want to do is basically focus all our work on first-party data. This is really, really important. We are not interested to work with data that does not belong to us. Why is that? Because this gives you definitely a competitive advantage, because you are working with your own data. Nobody potentially has. Maybe they have it too in a different form, but it's definitely an advantage to know that. Then, of course, you have to trust in your own data, so we assume it's the most accurate. It's the most, it's the most up-to-date. So as long as your tracking system are working fine, you have no delays. You have not an aggregator that does something with it and then ships it to you. It can be, in the best case, up to real time available for you, which is also quite important for certain projects. And this is also not neglectable. It's free, because we generate this information, this data, ourselves. Then some more reasons, like you might have heard about ITP, this intelligent tracking prevention stuff that happens. This will make our life very, very hard soon, or has already begun to, because with audience data, when we talk about a better understanding of a person, it's a necessity to be able to follow this person for a longer time. And this ITP, what they do is basically prevent this kind of tracking over a longer period of time. So this is really a problem, but it's a problem to everybody. And here I put like a little hint to origami. I think that the logging system, this logging initiative for Tamedia, is really important for us. With the logins, we can of course track a person much better and more in detail. Then, of course, Zeitgeist, e-privacy, GDPR, all this is basically also getting more and more tight. The rules are getting more severe. We have more observers looking at what we do and what we don't do. And this is the last one. It's like dependency and control. You know, when you are dependent on somebody giving you the data, you can really, and you need this data for crucial parts of your services. What happens if this source cedes to provide you this data? So this is also really not good at all. So the data pipeline, very fastly explained. It starts all with the collection of data. For that, we have created for the mobile and the web domain tracking libraries that you can integrate into the systems, into a website, into native apps, and that do push every source or signal that we want to our backend. We track logged-in users and anonymous users the same way. You will see why later. So basically, this gives us behavioral data. And this alone, so just knowing that you clicked on an article, gives you already some information, but you have to add more to that. And this more is basically what we need is user data. This is what we consider ground truths. It's like basically it gives us certainty that a certain session that was interested in an article XYZ is maybe a female. Because without this information, it's not possible to then define or to extrapolate this information to anonymous data. So user data we track, or we import basically from login systems of our brands. And because if you just look at the website and we know that our article on Tagesanzeiger was clicked, it's also not enough because we need to know what content was it. Was it about Trump? But was it in a positive or in a negative way? Because all this can matter really when you start to analyze it. And what the product of it is user profiles that at a later stage, and that's exactly where the exploitation starts. It sounds really bad and negative, but basically it's when we start to use these profiles. Here you see a few examples. The most common usage is recommendation systems, where you want to know a person, if it's male, its age, interests, and intents, maybe. Then personalization, and that's when you want to, design the landing page of a website, featuring articles or products that are likely of an interest of that user, instead of having just static content to share. So let's move over to explore. So now we got the data. Let's look a little bit into exploration of this data. This is just a few stats that we collected for April 2019. Switzerland is considerably small, let's say, and we do not aggressively track. What we track is basically what we really need for our services for now. Of course, we add more and more events, like for instance, scrolling and this kind of stuff, but that comes progressively, is added progressively to the system. One really nice figure is that our tracking has had only 15 seconds of silence. Basically, we calculated that and looked at the timeline, how many seconds nothing happened or no signals came in. We track people on our marketplaces. We track them, we are interested to know what kind of articles, the time of the day they are looking at the article, like the products on Ricardo and Tutti, for instance, what kind of cars are they interested, these kind of things. The biggest figure here are coming from our news titles. This is also a field where we are engineering or developing a lot of solutions at the moment. We are very active there. That's why we are really having a high focus on the news segment. And here we also track, for instance, how many people have read the article to the end. You only can guess, but these are kind of also like the signals that we are tracking there. That's why this number is also considerably high. And also in 20 minutes, like for instance, now that we are developing the video portal, something that is interesting for us is also like what kind of videos did the user watch, and did he watch it to the end? Did he stop after the pre-roll? This kind of stuff that is also important for us. So in total, we had about 3 billion events tracked during that month, which is, it's a nice figure. It's like basically in Switzerland, for Switzerland, you cannot compete with that with Google and Facebook, of course. But I think, and I'm coming back to the opportunity and the potential that Tamedia has, this is probably data and density of data that no other company has in Switzerland. And we have to start to use that. We have started to using that. At the end of the talk, I will invite you all to be more active also in that sense. Let's look, so now we are in the exploration phase. You know that, for instance, on 20 minutes, only about 5% of the users are logged in. All the other traffic that we see, all the article reads, the video plays, the shares, all the comments, is more or less done anonymously, which is quite the problem for us, because there's on a person which you have no information about, you cannot start to offer him stuff that is interesting for him, or it's much harder. When you start to use machine learning, basically, see you have this audience, these 5% of 20 minutes, where we have some information about, and the rest is all in gray mass. And now we want to give them a little more colors. So machine learning in a nutshell is what you do is, basically, from these 5%, we know quite a lot. We know their age, their gender. Gigia, it's a tremendously long and ugly form, and we ask for a lot of details. So we can use all of this information. So we have a source of truth. Of course, this source of truth is only available for 5%. It's very little, but we can try to extrapolate that. I don't know what happens there, so let me go back. So basically, the next thing is like, with this, you train a model. Basically, when there you don't have any names anymore in there, no emails, it's all anonymized. So it's basically safe to use. A model is basically a representation of basically how data correlates to a certain features. And then you can use that model and apply it to any anonymous session and then try to deduct a certain feature. A feature is age or gender or an interest for dog or cats, this kind of stuff. So what we do is we have kind of these matrices which you see like basically our user space, the dimensions that we would like to have more information about, and only a few points where we actually have some deterministic data. And with the process that I just showed you before, in these three simplified steps, we can use predictions, we can use these models to predict basically the last and missing points. And you see, with this, we predict like a lot of points, especially on 20 minutes. On other titles, like on Ricardo, because of the use case, the incentive to have a login is much higher. So there, the ratios are different. But on 20 minutes, we have to apply this kind of stuff a lot. The benefits of that is that now, for every user session that we see, we can actually have either hard facts, where we know by name, basically, his age and gender. And for the rest, we can use our predicted data, which is much, much better than having nothing available. The other part is it's in our full control. So we can define the thresholds. We can say, OK, as long as we are not over 75% of precision when it's about the gender, we just shut up and we do not take any we do not respond with information here. And what is very, very, very important to know is like, here we are totally GDPR safe. Because in that, here what we do is basically we generalize information from a very small audience where we have facts to a model which is totally identity neutral. It's just basically giving us a model that we can then use, like the vectors that we know from an anonymous user, and apply this model to it to detect by basically the missing feature. So this is really, really important for us. This was already like a first example of exploitation. And when we can do this, like for the masses of users on 20 minutes, we started to look with D&S advertisement into ways to use that really for very, very short sessions. So here we talk about users that we don't know yet. They are not in the system. They have no ground truth. And these models, as they are pre-calculated, we can start to use it with the first click. And with the first click, you see I have here like these examples of features that we want to know about. I added sporty and cat because we basically can do it for everything. As long as we have some ground truth to train a model, we can just apply it to everything. And with the very first click, that means like the load of the web page, we can already start to predict certain features. Here you see the probabilities that they are true are very low, but that's how the story starts. And maybe to know that the gender is like, for instance, in that case, 31% of probability to be female is already useful for your feature, for your product feature, I mean. But then it goes on. With every more click, new features get a prediction, others get more fortified, and this goes on to the end, where maybe even a feature like this person looks like sporty drops down, so we can consider to remove that feature again. And at the end, this anonymous person gets a face. Like basically here, summarizing what we found out, it's probably a woman, middle-aged, and she loves cats. And this is really important because at this point we can start to use this information for more, better targeting, like for advertisements, for marketing reasons, or for instance on 20 minutes to select articles that might be interesting for this person. And this only after, in this case, 5 clicks. Of course, this is a labor example, and the probabilities might never raise so high, but again, it's better to have a little bit of information than nothing. Another project that we are working currently on are video recommendations. So I told you recommendations are really a common use case for machine learning. And here we are currently working on the 20 minutes video portal. And here we have a series of recommendation systems running. We have one which is basically for you're watching a video, what other videos would we suggest for you? Then when you are on a specific channel, what should be the list of this of the videos within that category? And on the channel list also, it's like a little detail, but basically also there we can start to sorting this stuff according to your preferences. And we can also generate a channel that is totally customized for yourself. So this is kind of a very nice use case. And the very first prototype, basically, it was tested on live traffic, already had a nice uplift of 11%. So over basically no recommendation systems running at all. Then another one, this was a talk actually of a colleague of mine, Tim, here at Takes already this morning at 3. So basically either you invent a time machine, or I hope this stuff gets published on YouTube or soon, so you can rewatch his good talk, his great talk. Basically, in a nutshell, it's about article recommendations. And in here we have kind of these, what we generate from every read and every article that gets clicked on, we create a so-called, or I call it an embedding space. It's like it shows you the distribution of certain topics, categories in this case, in space. And what this gives you, it's unfortunately a little bit dark, I hope you see it. What we can first deduct from here is like centers of concentration. So basically we don't know what exactly stands in these articles that are near to each other and form such a dense cloud are articles that are related to each other. So we can cluster stuff. And when you basically know your position in that space, you basically know what this person might be interested in. And also what a person is not interested in, because the distance between you and the other points basically are directly connected to stuff that are either of interest or not of interest. In this case, the further away, the less interesting for you. So what can be then done is, from these clusters, we can generate lists of reading lists, basically, for the user. Then, in this case, currently we generate about 60,000 fully automated of these reading lists. Then we identify your personal performance within these lists, and the higher the point, the better in that case, and then we just select the list in which you perform the best. And that mix is basically in this very first iteration of that recommender is the strategy that we choose, and seems to work quite well. This work is actually already on production. How many of you use the I don't even know how it's called, like this personal view on 20 minutes? It's when you swipe to the left, well, you swipe to the right, so you open the view that is to the left. Nobody. Okay, one, Tim, no. Tim is actually a power user. He's on this user ranking already on position 3, so that doesn't count. No, so basically that was a safe spot for us. So we had something, because it's really important that you, when you develop such systems, that you start also to measure how it works. And what we did is we hijacked basically that view, which is in production, and replaced it with the man in the middle with our own recommendation systems. And now we can start to spread the word. So maybe all of you, after this talk, will go to this personal view and start to try it out. And maybe you can give us feedback if you like it or not. Maybe it doesn't work for you at all. So the last one is going now into exploitation in the section of advertisement. So CPC campaigns are campaigns where we get paid by click. So they are most of the time pretty ugly. They are also most of the time just space filler. So you see them a little bit everywhere. The problem with them is that they have no targeting information. So such an ad might appear in a very well and nicely written article on Tagesanzeiger, or at the end of 20 minutes everywhere. It can just be everywhere. So the goal is, basically we want to get that money. So we are interested to get as many clicks as possible, but we want to burn at the least amount of traffic on this ad. So this is a very typical and interesting optimization problem. So what we do is, to just quickly summarize also here the solution, AppNexus is the system that is providing these campaigns, and every day we read it out. We read for every campaign its performance, and what we get is basically who clicked on this ad by coincidence or with full will. We measure that. We apply our own audience information, or will in future. Currently it's a very simplistic system, but that's the goal. And then basically in a back loop, we optimize this campaign with specific targets. So we know if this ad here is mostly clicked by men, it makes no sense to send it to women. So this kind of operations we do. And this is actually the results of it. And it was important for me to have that, because if you are attentive, you will see that we have also like a negative development. So some campaigns, we are also not able to optimize that way, and we even make it worse. But you see that, so the range goes from maybe minus 80% to up to 300% of performance. And so you have this negative effect, this positive effect, and what matters at the end of the day is where the average lies. And currently we have an uplift of about 25% on such optimizations. And this is running, now that it's developed, basically every day for free for us, and with our own data. So we are not dependent on anybody to do this job. So this is very good for us. So basically, use cases for using our audience data. Very quickly, basically the prerequisite is what I talked already about. So if you have features that can be correlated within a huge data set, that's a prerequisite. If you don't have this ground truth, if you don't know about all your audience, who is women and who is men, how shall a system start to know this kind of information? So this kind of stuff must be there, and it must technically correlate to within this data set somehow. If not, it just makes no sense to apply any machine learning of any kind. Maybe with artificial intelligence in future it will be possible, though. I don't know. The other decision is like, basically you use machine learning when reach and availability is much more important than its quality, because we are still talking about, in most cases, about prediction, and prediction never comes at a 100% mark. You know, it's always like vague, precise, very precise in rare cases. And on the bottom line, you have a lot of examples how to use it. So not so good use cases are basically when human lives depend on it. So, and now that's far off. Tamedia is not a space agency. What I want to say with this is like, when you have a product where where people define the product, like for instance a newspaper, don't use machine learning techniques in that case. Quickly on the last one, exchange. Machine learning is really trendy. Now at TX, we had already like 3 or more talks about machine learning techniques and apply to our services. So what we do is basically, or my wish is that we support this core competencies within Tamedia. Why is that so important for me? Because when they are within Tamedia, we have kind of this learning cycle. We have this build, measure, and learn, and then apply the learnings to the next iteration. What happens when you are buying services, like machine learning services, fraud, all this kind of stuff are available nearly for free everywhere. They have just a huge disadvantage, like you are using a system that you do not control, you don't know how it works internally, and you are just an observer. Maybe you pay little money for that, maybe even you pay, even worst case, a lot of money to that. And yeah, okay, I stop. So what happens if you buy a solution, you get an instant benefit from that, but again, you're just the observer. You are limited to what that system offers. While when we support this kind of process internally, the learning process always stays with us. And when something doesn't work for one, it might work for another domain too. So this is a little bit my meta and my motivation. I hope to see this more and more often. So now that's exactly what I wanted to promise you, and I promised at the beginning. So we think that our processing pipeline is very well developed at the moment, and it's good enough to support all these initiatives that we see on all the different companies of Tamedia. Just some conditions to use it is basically you stay neutral, you stay compliant to GDPR. Basically, as we had shown in the previous slides, you deduct from this audience data model information, which you apply then to your own audience. And the other part is that one very crucial point is that data does not get singularized. So basically what we have in our DMP is anonymized data, and as long as we stay with anonymized data and we use only anonymized data, we are safe. As soon as we start to singularize it, that's when our DSA and the current contracts that we have and consent that we ask the user for do not work anymore. But if all this, you can put a check on that, we would like you, all engineers or product managers, to start to think about adding this audience data that we gather and collect for our projects, but we want to make them available for you. And we have different points where you can start to access it. Basically, we have created a real-time graph DB that you can access through APIs. This is a technical access. If you are not so into programming, but you know some SQL, we can give you access to Athena, which is basically an SQL interface to this data. And if this is also too technical and you like just to work with Excel or a text editor, we can also give you just access to the raw data. Good. This is very early access. The data is not yet complete. It's in progress. More and more gets added continuously, but we definitely think that you could have big benefits from that already now. This is really, really the biggest treasure Tamedia currently owns, or from a data engineering, data scientist, data analytics point of view, and we definitely hope that this data gets exploited by many, many products of us. Thank you.